Welcome to Love Shouldn't Hurt. My name is Hillary Platt, and today I'm honored to have our guest, author TamuLewis. Tamu wrote a book, Finally Free, and I would recommend this book to anybody. On the show, we talk about different topics related to domestic abuse, but this book, I believe, is good for anybody. It's a book about hope and finding yourself, and it's very insightful, and we'll go into more details about that in a moment. I also want to say that TamuLewis has her master's in counseling in psychology, and she conducts therapy on domestic violence victims, sexual assault, and mental health. She's currently working on her PhD. I don't think there's anything that you can stop at. And Tamu works at the Women's Center. She is the director for social justice programming in Atlantic County, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm honored to have you. I read Tamu's book and I couldn't put it down. It's really compelling, and it's really raw and courageous. And I'd like you to start out by telling us a little bit about why you decided to write your book, and then a little bit about your story.
Okay. Well, I decided to write Finally Free. It was a time in my life I was kind of stumped and wasn't sure what direction I was headed in. And one day I'm sitting in a living room and it came to me that you need to write your story. So I'm saying to myself, okay, I got a whole lot of stories going on. So it was more so focused on the domestic violence.
Right.
So I began to process that, and it took some time, and I just began writing.
How many years ago was that?
I would say we are in 2015. And I am 42, so I would probably say I started writing when I was 30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And when did this book actually get published?
The book actually got published in 2012.
Okay.
It actually got published in 2012. And it was just a journey. And as I took the journey, writing about the domestic violence, and then writing about the sexual abuse.
Right.
And then writing about the eating disorder. What I didn't realize at first, for me, it was actually a healing process.
Sure, it's cathartic.
Yes,
Yeah.
It was a healing, and there was things that I actually began to heal from that I didn't realize I never healed from. So that was really the main intention at first, and then realizing, oh my God, this is a book that you're about to put out to the world. So as I healed, I realized I was about to share this with the world to hopefully help someone else to heal.
So did it start out as journals, and then did someone help you create the book?
No, it just started out me just writing.
Wow.
I don't know if necessarily, I guess you could say journals, but I did know that it was a book. I did know,
Okay.
it wasn't just me just journaling. I did know that I was writing a book. I actually thought at first it was for others. I thought I was writing my story to help others. Didn't realize it was me first that I was helping.
Right.
Didn't realize I didn't heal yet.
Right. Well, in your book, in some of the first pages, you talk about the power of testimony. And do you want to explain to the audience what that is?
Well, when I talk about the power of testimony, when we talk about our own struggles and what we've been through, it helps all the time someone else.
Right.
So not realizing it, if we find ourselves afraid to talk about our own story, I think we're only hindering ourselves and also hindering others from healing. Because someone needs what I have. Someone needs to know what I've been through so that they can heal.
And that they're not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because so many times we think we're all by ourselves.
And not only that, it is so powerful to let someone know that they're not alone. And I coordinate Project Sarah at Jewish Family and Children's Service, which is our domestic abuse division. And our most powerful tool is outreach and education. And it's for that very reason. The more people realize that it's not just them, the more it dissipates the shame and the isolation, and the more people will come forward. So it's very powerful what you wrote in your book, and to let people know that, oh my gosh, I went through this too, and there's nothing wrong with saying it, and look how successful she is, and she's written a book, and she's found hope and gone on with her life, and she's helping others, and I think it's very inspiring. I really do.
Thank you. I've had so many people who have said, oh my God, I can't believe you're talking about that. And because I decided to talk about it,
Right.
they were finally able to say, even people that are much older than me, finally say, okay, I can be free.
Yeah,
I can talk about my story.
Yeah, we have seniors that come to us, and I had a senior that told me she had been abused for 40 years, and I was the first person she told.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never too late to set yourself free and to unburden yourself. Mm-hmm. Also, what I was thinking of was that as a parent, if you read this book, it gives you so many great clues into the mind of a child and a teenager and the red flags. You might look at your teenager or a student or your son or daughter's friend, and you might know that they have an eating disorder, or you might see that they're withdrawn, or that they have anger issues. And as a therapist, I'm sure you look beyond that first layer once you get through that first layer and see maybe what's causing that. And I'm not sure if before I read your book I would have thought to go beyond some of the layers that you talk about. So as a parent, as a counselor, it's very educating.
Thank you. We do have to realize that there's most of the time so much more going on. Right. For example, my mom said to me when I had showed her the manuscript of it before I even decided that this was going to happen, because this was the first time. How much did she know? My mom knew none of it. She didn't know about the domestic violence. She didn't know about the sexual abuse. I kept it all to myself, and I dealt with it all myself until I shared with her when I believe I was 31 when I showed her the manuscript.
And must have been so much to process.
It was so much to process, for my mom, because she at that time began to look at me like I was 8 years old, because that was the first time that I was sexually abused.
Right.
And for her, she thought I was 8 now, and it hurt her so bad, because where she thought she was protecting me.
Right.
Never let me go to stay the night at anyone's house.
Right.
She felt like she was protecting me and keeping me close, not realizing it was family.
And from what I read, your mom's very, I got the impression that she was non-judgmental and she was supportive.
She was.
That, she didn't ask too many questions. She was there for you. So, I can't imagine being a mom.
Yeah.
Hearing that. But we're kind of backtracking. So if you could tell us, I don't want to give away everything in the book, but just an abridged version of your journey, so that people have an idea of what we're talking about.
No problem. My journey, I would say I always felt like this child that was alone. I always felt that way coming into the world. I always felt weird, different. And at the age of 8 was the first time I was sexually abused. And it continued till I was 15 years old. Different people, and it was always someone that I knew.
I was going to say someone that you should have felt safe with.
Whether it was a blood relative or a relative through marriage.
Right.
Always someone. It was never the stranger, that we say stranger danger.
Right.
Always someone.
Say that anymore.
Yeah. No. It was always someone that we knew. And that continued. And because that continued, and because I kept things to myself, I didn't share it with my brother. I didn't share it with my father. My parents separated when I was 4, but I always saw my dad, always a daddy's girl. I didn't share it with anyone, because, you get the things you better not tell anyone. I'm either going to hurt you, I'm going to hurt your family, or you're going to get in trouble too.
Right.
When you're a kid,
right.
What do you know? And you take those words for real.
And your abuser told you nobody would believe you.
Correct.
And you're a scared child.
Yeah. So that's what you do. So I held it in for so long. And because of that, not realizing that I had an eating disorder when I was young,
right.
But I do know now I know, when I go and look back, I used to hide food,
right?
And I had food in my closet, I had food under my bed, and I would eat all the time. And I started drinking when I was 10. These were my ways. Started smoking marijuana when I was 12. These were my ways of hope. And once I realized, when I took that drink, and I said, "Ooh, it's pretty good." Like, I felt good and forgot about what was going on. It became a habit.
Right.
So that's how I lived my years as an adolescent.
Right.
You know, and it's funny because sometimes when I talk about it, one of the things that when I did tell my mom, she said, I used to just think you were a disobedient child.
Mm.
You know, because I was very disobedient. I was angry. I was mad. I was one of those children out in the street, barely. I wasn't on the street, but you know, barely. I would go to school when I wanted to, and I was just disobedient. You know, and she felt like that's all it was. She never knew that there was something underlining,
Right.
as what we just got finished talking about.
Right.
And that's how I live my life. So,
And I just have to say it's interesting because we talk all the time about how anybody can be a victim of abuse. You could have a Brady Bunch upbringing, or you could have certain things that shape your personality to make you more vulnerable to someone who is going to be controlling and domineering. You definitely, in your book, describe having issues of self-confidence and needing love at any cost because of things these horrible incidents that shaped the way your journey went. So when you met your abuser when you were in college, he paid attention to you, and if you could tell us a little bit about how you looked at that, your view.
I'll just tell you our very beginning, because it's not funny, but for me, when I think about it, he did pay attention. Crazy attention, but he paid attention. You know, and I would say one of our second instances meeting together, we're on the Camden County campus, and I'm going to the bus stop, and I see this guy running across the field, and he's running and screaming my name, and I wasn't sure, and I'm looking if he was saying me. You know, you just see someone running across and yelling, and I'm just walking but looking, and as he got closer, I'm like, okay, he's screaming my name, and all the second time I ever met him, he's in my face, finger in my face. Where were you? You weren't where you always are. You're usually in the lounge every day. I see your steps. I watch you.
Right.
These are all the things he was saying.
Right.
But for me, I was 19. I was 20. I was 20. Just got kicked out of college, of a 4-year college.
Right.
Low self-esteem.
Right.
Was a drunk. Just needing attention, needing love, trying to figure out how I'm going to tell my mom I just got expelled from the 4-year college and trying to figure all that out. And here come this guy in my face paying me some attention. Crazy attention, but it's attention. And his fingers in my face. And where were you? And blah, blah, blah. Don't you ever do that again. I brought lunch for you. And he pulls up the Chinese food, shrimp fried rice. And I brought lunch for you because I never see you eat.
And that meant a lot to you because
It
you
did.
also weren't really eating because couldn't really afford it.
Yeah. You know, I could have, you know, like I said, I could have made lunch from home, but I didn't. I chose, you know, I didn't do that. And when he held up the lunch, I laugh about it because I said, well, do you still, no, he said I brought lunch just before he held it up. I said, do you still got it?
Right.
And he was like, yeah. I was like, well, can I have it? Because I was hungry. I wanted to eat. And that was the dynamics. Second time I ever met him.
Right, and the dynamics also, you said when you got on the bus, you never spoke about it again,
No.
like it never happened.
Like it never happened.
So that was definitely a pattern. And you talk about jealousy and how kids have to understand when they're dating that it's portrayed in the media as something romantic, and it's really controlling behavior. And when I talk to the teens in our Building Healthy Relationships program, I don't want to make them feel bad because jealousy is a normal reaction. It's what you do about it. So it's how you act on it.
Yeah.
And he obviously acted controlling
He did.
on his jealousy. And, you know, we didn't know any better back then.
No.
So
No.
it's understandable to take that for love and attention and affection.
We take it as sweet, as precious. Oh, he loves me.
Right.
You know, he was jealous of the bus driver. Because the
Right.
bus driver was like, oh, I haven't seen her. Is she okay? And he's like, why are you asking about my girl?
Right.
And speaking of, you know, I always like to say, speaking of my girl, like we never even made that connection to say, you know, you're my boyfriend, you're my girl. It just saw him that one day and he paid attention and here we are in this relationship.
And then it's interesting, when I saw you speak, we were on a panel, I liked that you talked about the cultural aspect, because I think that a lot of the cultures, although they're different, they all have that same thread. And you said that you grew up with your mom saying, basically talking down to about girls that didn't have a baby daddy and weren't.
That was my grandma.
Oh, your grandma.
Yes,
okay.
that was my grandma.
So you ended up getting together, having a relationship, and then you had a baby with this person.
Yes.
So it just really resonated in me when you spoke to the group, that you said you would rather stay in the relationship and endure that torture than have a label as a single mom. And that just broke my heart.
It was as if I had to prove her wrong.
Right.
And I was very close to my grandma, you know, and when she would say those things, and we'd see the young ladies walking down the street, and she would say, don't you ever end up like that. If you get pregnant by a guy, you're going to end up just like that.
Right.
So for me, I had to prove her wrong.
Right.
So I stayed in an abusive relationship to prove her wrong.
Right. And it's interesting because that happens a lot to teenagers that I see also, because, of course, one of the patterns is that the abuser isolates their victim. And so then it's like the two of you against the world. And you've ended up fighting with your friends, fighting with your family.
Yes.
And then you feel like, okay, I've gone this far. It's hard to then tell them the truth. I'd rather stick it out than tell them what's going on. So that's also what we try to impress on anyone at any age, that it's never too late to let people that love you, even if they've gotten sick of the drama and left you, if you go up to somebody and you tell them what's going on, if they've ever had feelings for you, they're going to be there for you. Or somebody will be there for you.
And it's funny because my family is very loving. My mother, father, my family, period, are very loving. And I knew that if I went to them at any time, they would have had open arms.
Right.
I wasn't ready.
Right.
I didn't want him harmed.
Correct.
I didn't want nothing, I just wasn't ready. So for me, I've always been of a mentality of I'm going to be in it. And when I'm done, I'm done.
Right.
But while I'm in it, I'm going to stick in it. Didn't always benefit me. Of course, it wasn't healthy, but that was my mind state.
Right. And you talk about the cycle of abuse. Could you just tell us maybe an incident in the book or an example of, so people know what the cycle of abuse is?
Well, when we talk about the cycle of violence, in regards to my relationship, one instance, me and my daughter she was not even one, about one, who was actually at his mother's house, and she wasn't there. And we did something that evening, didn't have the keys to the car. So he was like, can you call? It was about 11:30 or so. He's like, can you call your mom, see if she has the keys at the house? I said, well, we're calling in the morning because I know she's asleep. No big deal. We're not going anywhere. We're calling in the morning. So
you wanted to go out and get cigarettes, I think.
Yes, that's what I was.
See, I really read your whole book.
Very good. That's what I was going to go do. That's why we were looking for the keys to the car. And I was going to get some cigarettes. That's funny. And no keys. So he ended up calling her.
Right.
So
late at night.
Yeah, and I didn't know. It was, took a shower. He ended up calling her, so the keys were there. I was like, oh, you called mine? He was like, yeah, we needed the keys. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go get some cigarettes then. And he's like, no, you're not. And so we ended up fighting. So then we ended up I ended up being chased around the table.
Right.
Being chased around the table because he's coming at me. I end up in the kitchen. I'm at the wall of the kitchen, and he swings. I duck. There's a hole in the wall. So as he's hole in the wall trying to get his hand out, I run this way, scoop up my daughter, run in the room.
Right.
And I lock the door.
Right. That's actually, I was thinking about this when I was reading your book, that I wanted to say that the two places that we tell men or women that are experiencing abuse in their home, the two rooms to avoid, if you can at all possible, are the kitchen and the bathroom. And that's because you're
closed in.
You're closed in,
Yeah.
and in the kitchen, of course, there's weapons all around.
Yeah. And for me, not thinking, I'm just running.
Right.
I'm just running, trying to get away.
You made yourself safe. You got in the bedroom with your daughter.
Yeah. And we ended up staying in there all night. I tried to go out a window, but then he went to the front door because the window and the door was right next to each other to the front of the house. So he's there, and I'm like, okay, we can't go out the window. So I just barricaded the door, put a chair under it. And after he stopped fighting for a while trying to get in, we ended up sleeping in this room on the floor.
Right.
There was no bed in this room. Me and my daughter, I found something to cover up with, and that's where we slept. That morning, we wake up, go out the room, and it was as if everything was okay.
Yeah.
And that's the cycle of violence, because it's like we go through that phase that's that intense, you get the belittling, name calling, all those things, and then you have that intense, whether it's hitting or whatever might occur, the huge incident, and then it calms down, sort of like a honeymoon phase,
right?
And then it just keeps going,
right? And then
it keeps going.
What's interesting is we talk about on this show all types of abuse. Mm-hmm. I personally feel that emotional abuse can't be separated from all the other abuses. No. Because how can you not be emotionally affected by stalking, financial abuse? It's all forms of control. Mm-hmm. So you were fed up, and one time you just couldn't stand anymore and you called the police. Mm-hmm. And after that, the physical abuse stopped.
Correct.
But you say in your book, like so many other people, that was almost worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because the name calling and the emotional piece got more intense.
Right.
The cheating became just out in the open.
Right.
I'm going out. Girl, come right there. All those kind of things, and just belittling me, making me feel like totally nothing.
Correct.
And you're not going nowhere. Where you think you're going to go? And just making me feel really stupid and ashamed of who I was.
I had a client that recently, and I just want to say that when I do talk about clients, I might be putting a couple stories together, and we keep everyone's anonymity. Mm-hmm. But I had a client once say to me that the emotional abuse she went through was so horrific that she felt so completely like nothing, mm-hmm. that not only did she try to hurt herself, but she could no longer drive. Mm-hmm. She had no more confidence. And it took a long time to get that back. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, how old is your daughter now?
My daughter's 20.
So she must think you're so strong. I mean, when you say all the things that you went through, instead of looking at someone and saying not only what they endured, but how you were able to keep yourself safe and keep your daughter safe. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking as you're talking that I don't want people to think, well, why didn't she get out earlier? Why didn't she get out earlier? You talk about barriers and why people stay, and there's mm-hmm. so many different reasons. Mm-hmm. And, you know when the right time Correct. Is to leave. Because when you leave, that is the most dangerous mm-hmm. time. Mm-hmm. And you have to have safety planning and try to do it the right way. And you had yourself to think about, you had your daughter to think about, and you weren't ready. And it's not common to leave and never come back.
Correct.
So I applaud you. I think it's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
I do want to read a passage in your book. Or unless you want to read it, it's about when you finally left.
Okay.
You want to?
You can read it.
Okay.
You're right.
Well, wouldn't you know, the bottom finally dropped without any warning signs. While I was sitting in the living room, he mentioned that dinner was done, and when I proceeded to go into the kitchen to fix my plate, he punched me in the eye. No conversation, no yelling, no screaming. It was as if it was a normal thing to do, because afterwards he walked out of the kitchen into another room, and I went back into the kitchen and proceeded to fix myself a plate. And then later you say, he came back in and very quickly pulled out a knife. I guess this is when you were sitting and eating, mm-hmm. and pressed it hard against my neck, stating that he could kill me and no one would ever know that he did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the first time that it resonated in my head that I had to get out of here. It was the first time, and no, I didn't leave that night, but the thought,
right,
the process.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, it was just more so.
That's when it switched.
Yes, that's when it clicked in,
right.
And I had to begin to figure out, how am I going to do this?
Right.
How am I going to take my daughter and get out of here? in the safest way possible.
Right.
You know, so it still took a little bit of time.
And not only were you physically and emotionally abused, you were financially abused.
Yes, yes.
Which also women really keep secret. In every social economic status, women are financially abused, and that is an incredibly powerful form of control.
You know, we both worked. He paid the bills, and this was my first time ever living with someone.
Right.
You know, and he said, "Well, I'll pay the bills. You know, it's fine." So I'm like, "Okay." You know, so I gave most of my check.
Right.
You know, and I'm thinking bills are being paid, when in fact they were not.
Right.
You know, we had got an eviction notice. I'm like, what's the eviction notice? We both work.
Right.
Rent's being paid, so I thought, you know, late bills are coming.
Right.
Yeah.
I had a client that had a sheriff speak very degradingly to her when he served her eviction notice. And I was really proud of her that she stood up to him and said, "I'm not a criminal, I'm a victim." And she put him in his place, and she told him why she was getting that eviction notice. And I don't know if it made a difference, but
She used her voice.
Yeah, she used her voice, and it's empowering. And more people need to get rid of that ignorance and that myth.
Yes, yes.
I know the time is short, so I have so many notes, and I know we can't get to everything. I would love for you to talk about, unfortunately we don't have that much time, but your journey through it, that you were able to find forgiveness, and what support systems you use to help lift you up and give you hope. Because maybe it might resonate with someone who's listening.
For me, I knew that I had to forgive. I knew that I had to forgive in order for me to be able to move forward. You know, my faith, my family, that's what helped me to hold on. And I talk about forgiveness a lot because a lot of people say, well, forgive. But I try to explain to people, forgiveness is not for them, it's for you.
Right.
You know, it's for us to be able to let it go so that we don't walk around with the anger.
Right, because you said you had so much anger.
Yes, I did.
Understandably.
You know, and it spewed into my marriage.
Right.
You know, I tell people I wouldn't say I ended up the perpetrator.
Right.
You know, not physical, but emotional, verbal abuse, because I was so angry.
Right.
I was so angry, and it's not a good way to live. So once I realized that, and once I started to get help and trust and believe, you know, healing started to happen. And it was a process. It was a process. I had to take the steps. For the eating disorder, I ended up in a treatment center, which had a lot of different facets to it, around family therapy, around individual therapy, and all those things. So not only did it help me with the eating disorder, but it helped me to go through the trauma.
Yeah.
Period.
And I know religion played a big part.
Yes,
and
huge.
When we have clients that we talk to and we talk about support system, we will often say, do you have any religious affiliation, or would you like us to try to find you one? Because oftentimes victims can't go to their churches or their synagogues or whatever place of worship anymore because the abuser's there. And so we try to fulfill that spiritual need, because oftentimes people are so ensconced in it, they're like, oh yeah, I have my religious institution, I can go to them for support also, because you're so used to keeping things secret.
Yep. You know, and that was a huge piece. Like I said, my faith, just my belief, my prayer time, and just trusting and believing that wasn't my fault, you know, and that I can survive this. That basically helped me through this process.
And that you spoke up, as we talked about, the power of testimony to dispel the shame, to dispel the myth that you're alone.
Yeah, a lot of people still, you know, I have some people that are a little uneasy, you know, when you talk about abuse. And they say, I can't believe you could talk about that. You're not embarrassed? You're not shameful? No. Because if I'm embarrassed and if I'm shameful, I can't help no one else to not be embarrassed and not be shameful. You know, this is about helping other people to heal.
Right.
That's what giving our testimony is about. And you can't be shameful and embarrassed about that. You didn't do anything wrong to be shameful and embarrassed.
Well, I think you're helping so many people, and I'm just so honored to have had this conversation with you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Definitely an honor.
We're going to talk about information on how to get your book. I just want to say that if anybody also wants to continue this conversation, there's so many resources in the area. You can call Domestic Violence Hotline. You can also call Jewish Family and Children's Service. We are not 24 hours. We are during the day, but you can call our main number at 856-424-1333. And if you ask for Sarah, anyone who answers the phone will understand that you're in a situation that you need help, and they will get you the proper guidance. Also, our website is www.jfcssnj.org. And if you need any other resources, any local shelters in the area, we work with Camden County Women's Center, or any other counties, you just give us a call and we'll be able to help you out. Also, if you would like TamuLewis's book, Finally Free, Tamu is going to give you some information on how to find that.
Thank you. You can actually get my book. My email address is Tamu, that's TAMU, .Lewis, LEWIS, @yahoo.com. So if you're interested in the book, you can email me and I will get that to you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's great having you on the show.
Thank you.
And remember, love shouldn't hurt.